What would you do if the children you raised, the ones you sacrificed everything for, looked you in the eyes and decided you were worth less than the property you owned? I'm Jordan. I'm 65 years old, and 2 years ago, I buried my wife of 40 years. What happened next? Well, let me just say that grief has a way of revealing people's true colors. And sometimes, those colors are uglier than you ever imagined. Stay with me, because what my sons tried to do and what I did in return will shock you. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the moment I realized that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Jordan, and for most of my adult life, I was a real estate agent. Not just any agent, though. I was good at what I did. Really good. While other agents were struggling to close 1 or 2 deals a month, I was closing 5, sometimes 6. I had the golden touch, they said. The truth? I worked harder than anyone else. Early mornings, late nights, weekends, holidays. I sacrificed time with my family to build an empire. And build it, I did. By the time I turned 60, I owned investment properties across 3 states. Apartment complexes, commercial buildings, prime residential lots. My portfolio was worth millions, plural. I had achieved what most people only dream about: financial freedom, security for my family, a legacy to pass down to my children. My wife, Sarah, she was my rock through it all. 40 years of marriage, 40 years of partnership. She raised our 2 sons while I was out chasing deals. She managed our home, our lives, our everything. She was the glue that held our family together, and I loved her more than words could ever express. But 2 years ago, cancer took her from me. You know, people tell you that grief comes in stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. What they don't tell you is that grief isn't linear. It's a tsunami that crashes over you when you least expect it. You'll be fine one moment, functioning like a normal human being, and then suddenly you're on the floor of your bedroom, clutching her pillow, sobbing like a child. Sarah fought that cancer with everything she had: chemo, radiation, experimental treatments. We spared no expense. But in the end, cancer doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care about your dreams or your plans or the life you still wanted to live together. It just takes and takes until there's nothing left to take. When she died, I thought I had lost everything that mattered. I was wrong. There was still more to lose. My sons, Michael and David, they were there at the funeral. Of course they were. Michael is 38, married to a woman named Jennifer. They have 2 kids, my grandchildren, Emma and Lucas. David is 35, married to Rebecca. They have 1 daughter, Sophia. On the surface, we looked like the perfect family, grieving together, supporting each other, united in our loss. But perfect families, I learned, are often just carefully constructed illusions. The first sign came about 3 weeks after the funeral. I was still in that fog, that terrible space where you're just trying to remember how to breathe, how to exist in a world where your partner of 40 years is suddenly gone. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating properly. I was just existing. Michael stopped by the house one afternoon, said he wanted to check on me, see how I was doing. I appreciated it, or at least I thought I did. We sat in the living room, the same room where Sarah and I had hosted countless family dinners, Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations. Every corner held a memory. "Dad," Michael said, his tone careful, measured, "we need to talk about practical things." Practical things. I should have known right then. "What kind of practical things?" I asked. "Well, the house, your properties, your assets. Have you thought about what happens with all of this? I mean, you're alone now. This house is
too big for one person. And managing all those properties, that's a lot of stress. Maybe it's time to think about simplifying things. Simplifying things. That's what he called it. I was too tired to argue, too deep in my grief to see what was really happening. So I just nodded and said I'd think about it. He seemed satisfied with that and left shortly after. But then David came by the next week. Almost the same conversation, almost the same words. "Dad, have you thought about your future? This house, your properties, it's a lot to handle alone. Maybe we should talk to a lawyer, get things organized, make sure everything is secure." Secure. For whom, I wondered. But I didn't ask. Not yet.
It was their wives who gave them away. Jennifer and Rebecca started dropping by more frequently, always together, always with the same concerned expressions plastered on their faces. They'd bring casseroles I didn't eat, offer to help clean a house that didn't need cleaning, and pepper me with questions disguised as concern. "Jordan, have you thought about assisted living? It might be nice to have people around, so you're not so lonely." "Jordan, these stairs must be hard on your knees. Wouldn't a single-story condo be easier?" "Jordan, managing all these properties at your age, isn't that exhausting? Maybe it's time to let the boys help. They could take over, handle the stress for you." At your age. As if 65 meant I had one foot in the grave already. As if I wasn't still sharp, still capable, still the same man who had built this empire from nothing. But it was a conversation I overheard that finally opened my eyes. I had dozed off in my recliner one Sunday afternoon. The family had come over, supposedly for a nice dinner together. I woke up to voices coming from the kitchen. Jennifer and Rebecca talking in hushed tones, clearly not realizing I was within earshot. "We need to move faster," Jennifer said. "He's vulnerable right now. This is the perfect time." "I know, but we have to be careful. We can't make it obvious. David says we need to make him think it's his idea." "Michael's already working on him. The whole, this house is too big, too much stress angle. We just need to keep pushing. Once we get him into a home, we can handle the rest. Power of attorney, transfer of assets. My friend's parents did it, and it worked perfectly." "God, I can't wait. Do you know how much those properties are worth? We'll finally be able to afford that lake house, and the kids' private school tuition will be covered for years." My blood ran cold.
I sat there in that recliner, perfectly still, listening to my daughters-in-law plot my disposal like I was a piece of unwanted furniture. The worst part, they talked about it so casually, so matter-of-factly, like shipping me off to a nursing home and stealing my life's work was just another item on their to-do list, right between grocery shopping and picking up dry cleaning. I didn't confront them. Not then. I've learned in 65 years that information is power, and I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with before I made my move. Over the next few weeks, I played along. I acted like the grieving, confused widower they wanted me to be. I let them think their plan was working. Meanwhile, I started paying closer attention. I started noticing things. Michael began bringing by helpful documents, estate planning guides, brochures for upscale retirement communities, information about simplified living. He'd sit with me, his hand on my shoulder, his voice dripping with false concern, talking about how these places offered community and care and peace of mind. Peace of mind. That's rich, coming from someone planning to rob me blind. David took a different approach. He started talking about how hard it must be to manage everything alone, how the properties required so much attention, so much work. Wouldn't it be easier, he suggested, if he and Michael took over? Just temporarily, of course, just until I found my footing again. Temporarily, right, and I was born yesterday. Their wives continued their visits, always together, always with that same practiced sympathy. They'd walk through my house and I'd catch them eyeing furniture, paintings, valuables. Once I saw Rebecca take a photo of an antique vase Sarah had loved. When she noticed me watching, she smiled and said she was just admiring how beautiful it was. Sure, admiring it, or appraising it. The really painful part? My grandchildren were being used as leverage. Emma misses you so much, Dad. Wouldn't it be nice if you lived somewhere closer to us, somewhere we could visit more often? As if moving me into a nursing home would somehow bring us closer together, as if I didn't see through that manipulation for exactly what it was.
I may be 65, but I'm far from senile. And I didn't build a multi-million-dollar real estate empire by being naive or passive. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called my lawyer, Richard Hammond. Richard and I went back 30 years. He'd handled every major deal I'd ever made, every property transaction, every contract. More than that, he was a friend, someone I trusted implicitly. "Richard," I said when I met him at his office, "I need to make some changes to my estate plan." He leaned back in his leather chair, studying me over his glasses. "What kind of changes are we talking about, Jordan?" I told him everything. The conversations, the plotting, the manipulation. The way my own sons and their wives were circling me like vultures, just waiting for the opportunity to pick my bones clean. Richard listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Jordan. I truly am. But I'm not entirely surprised. You'd be shocked how often I see this. Family members getting impatient for their inheritance, especially when significant assets are involved." "Well," I said, "they're going to be very disappointed." Richard smiled, a sharp, knowing smile. "What did you have in mind?" Over the next hour, we crafted a new estate plan, a complete overhaul. Nothing would go to my sons. Not the house, not the properties, not a single dollar. Instead, everything would go to a legitimate charitable organization, a well-run nursing home that provided care for elderly people who couldn't afford it themselves. A place where the staff actually cared about the residents, where seniors were treated with dignity and respect. The kind of place my sons had never intended to send me to. "This is ironclad?" I asked Richard when we were done. "Absolutely," he confirmed. "Nobody can contest this. Your assets, your choice. You're of sound mind, there's no coercion, no undue influence. This will stand up in any court in the country." "Good," I said, "because I want them to know. I want them to understand exactly what they've lost and why they lost it."
I waited 2 more weeks. I let them continue their charade. Let them think their plan was progressing smoothly. Michael even brought by papers for a retirement community, enthusiastically describing the amenities like he was selling me a vacation package. David had started talking about power of attorney, suggesting it would make things so much easier for everyone. Then I called a family meeting. Both sons, both daughters-in-law, all together in my living room on a Sunday evening. They came eagerly, probably thinking this was it, this was the moment I'd roll over and give them what they wanted. They were half right. This was the moment. Just not the moment they expected. "Boys," I started, looking at Michael and David, "we need to talk about the future. My future." They exchanged glances. Jennifer sat forward slightly, her eyes bright with anticipation. Rebecca actually smiled. "I know you've been concerned about me,
About this house being too big, about the properties being too much work, about me being alone. And you know what? You're right. Things do need to change. Michael practically beamed. Dad, that's great. We're so glad you're seeing this clearly. We just want what's best for you. I'm sure you do, I said, my voice flat. That's why I've made some decisions. I've updated my estate plan. Oh, David leaned forward. That's actually really responsible, Dad. Smart thinking. I thought so, I agreed. I've decided that when I die, all of my assets, everything, the house, the properties, the investments, all of it, will go to the Willowbrook Senior Living Foundation. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Jennifer's mouth actually fell open. Rebecca's face went pale. Michael and David just stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. What? Michael finally managed. The Willowbrook Senior Living Foundation, I repeated calmly. It's a charity that runs nursing homes for elderly people who can't afford proper care. They do wonderful work. I've been very impressed with their operation. They'll put my assets to good use, I'm certain.
You can't be serious, David stammered. Dad, you can't just give away everything to strangers. Why not? I asked. It's my property, my assets, my choice. But we're your family, Jennifer burst out, her careful composure cracking. We're your sons, your blood. My blood, I repeated slowly. Interesting that you mentioned that, because I heard some interesting things from my blood about a month ago. Something about how this was the perfect time because I was vulnerable. Something about power of attorney and asset transfers and lake houses and private school tuition. Rebecca's face went from pale to crimson. Jennifer looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Dad, I don't know what you think you heard, but I know exactly what I heard. I heard you planning to manipulate a grieving widower into signing away his autonomy so you could get your hands on his money faster. I heard you discussing nursing homes, not because you cared about my well-being, but because you wanted me out of the way. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Did you really think I was that far gone? We were worried about you, living here alone at your age. Stop, I said sharply. Just stop. Don't insult my intelligence with these lies. I know exactly what you were doing. You couldn't wait for me to die naturally. You wanted to speed up the process, warehouse me somewhere so you could start enjoying your inheritance early? The room erupted. Both sons talking over each other, making excuses, trying to explain, trying to convince me I had misunderstood. Their wives sat frozen, knowing they'd been caught, but unwilling to admit it. The noise was overwhelming, but I just sat there, calm, waiting for them to exhaust themselves. Finally, Michael played what he clearly thought was his trump card. If you do this, you'll never see your grandchildren again. Is that what you want? And there it was, the threat, the final proof that I'd made the right decision. Let me tell you something, I said quietly, and something in my tone made them all go silent. Your mother, Sarah, she loved you boys more than life itself. She sacrificed so much for you. Her career, her dreams, her time. She poured everything into raising you to be good men, men of character and integrity. And I worked myself to the bone to provide for this family, to build something lasting, something meaningful. I stood up, looking each of them in the eye. If you're willing to use my grandchildren as pawns, if you're willing to threaten taking them away because you didn't get the money you wanted, then you're not the men your mother raised. You're not the men I thought you were. And honestly, I don't want to see who you've become.
Jennifer started crying. Not quiet tears, but loud, dramatic sobs. Rebecca just looked furious, her jaw clenched tight. Michael and David were both talking at once again, their voices rising in anger now that they realized their manipulation tactics weren't working.
"This is insane," David shouted. "You're going to give millions of dollars to complete strangers instead of your own family?" "Yes," I said simply, "because those strangers run an organization that actually helps people, that treats elderly individuals with dignity and respect, unlike my own family, apparently." "You'll regret this," Michael said coldly. "You'll die alone, and you'll regret it." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but I'll die with my integrity intact. Can you say the same?" That's when Jennifer really lost it. She lunged forward, pointing her finger at me. "You're a selfish, bitter old man. We've spent years dealing with you, putting up with you, and this is how you repay us? We deserve that money. We've earned it." "Earned it?" I repeated, genuinely curious. "How exactly have you earned it? By pretending to care about me? By plotting behind my back? By treating me like an inconvenient obstacle between you and a payday?" Rebecca stood up then, grabbing her purse. "We're leaving. This is clearly pointless. Come on, David." David hesitated, looking torn between anger and something that might have been regret. For a moment, I thought, maybe, just maybe, he might apologize, might admit what they'd done and try to make it right. But then Jennifer grabbed Michael's arm, and Rebecca snapped, "David, now!" And whatever moment of potential redemption might have existed, vanished. They stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I stood there in my suddenly quiet living room, alone again, but this time feeling strangely lighter. The next few weeks were hard, I won't lie. The silence was deafening. No calls, no visits, no photos of my grandchildren texted to my phone. It was like I'd been erased from their lives completely. I thought about Emma, Lucas, and Sophia, my grandchildren. I wondered if they'd even remember me when they grew up, or if I'd just be a vague memory, a mysterious figure their parents never talked about. That hurt. It still hurts. But you know what? I don't regret my decision. Not for a second. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Money reveals character. It doesn't create character, but it definitely reveals it. When significant assets are involved, people show you who they really are. And sometimes who they really are is deeply disappointing. My sons, the boys I raised, the young men I was so proud of, they made their choice. They chose greed over love. They chose money over relationship. They chose to see me as a resource to be exploited rather than a father to be cherished. And I made my choice too. I chose dignity. I chose to maintain control of my own life and my own assets. I chose to use my wealth to actually help people rather than fund lake houses and private schools for people who saw me as nothing more than a walking inheritance. People have asked me if I'm lonely. The answer is yes, sometimes, especially on holidays or when I see families together in restaurants or when I walk past the room that used to be the boys' nursery. But I'd rather be lonely with my self-respect intact than surrounded by people who only pretend to love me because of what I can give them.
A few months after everything exploded, I did something I should have done earlier. I visited the Willowbrook Senior Living Foundation, the charity that will inherit my estate. It's a beautiful facility, actually. Clean, well-maintained, with staff members who genuinely seem to care about the residents. I met some of the people who live there, folks who worked hard their whole lives but didn't have the financial success I did. People who deserve dignity in their final years but couldn't afford the exorbitant costs of quality care. There was this one woman, Margaret. She was 92, sharp as a tack, with these bright blue eyes and a wicked sense of humor. She'd been a school teacher for 40 years, never married, no children, outlived most of her friends. She told me about how Willowbrook took her in when her savings ran out, how they treated her like family when she had no one else. "Places like this," she said, patting my hand, "they're a godsend.
Not everyone has children who can take care of them. And honestly, even some people who do have children, well, let's just say not all children are blessings. She didn't know my story, but it was like she'd looked into my soul. I started volunteering there once a week, just a few hours, nothing major. I played chess with some of the residents, help with their tablet computers when they get confused by technology, sometimes just sit and listen to their stories. These people, these strangers, they've given me something my own family couldn't. Genuine connection. No ulterior motives, no hidden agendas, just human beings appreciating another human being's company. And you know what's funny? I feel more like myself there than I have in years. More than I felt in those last few months when my sons and their wives were circling, waiting, plotting.
I've had a lot of time to think over these past 2 years. About life, about family, about what really matters in the end. We spend so much time building things. Careers, portfolios, empires, and we sacrifice time with our loved ones, telling ourselves it's for them, that we're securing their future. But what happens when the future arrives and the people you built it for only care about the things you built, not about you? Sarah used to tell me to slow down. Jordan, she'd say, the boys need your time, not your money. I'd nod and agree, and then go right back to work, convincing myself I was doing the right thing, providing, building, securing. Now I wonder if I did this to myself, if I taught my sons to value financial success above everything else, because that's what I modeled for them. If I created this situation by prioritizing money over relationship for so many years. Maybe I did. I'll never know for sure. But even if I played a part in creating the problem, that doesn't excuse what they did. That doesn't make it okay for them to view me as nothing more than an ATM, waiting for the right moment to make a withdrawal. There's a difference between wanting to inherit from your parents eventually and actively plotting to manipulate and dispose of them to speed up the process. One is natural human expectation. The other is betrayal. And betrayal, I've learned, is something you can't come back from. Not easily, anyway. Maybe not at all. People have suggested I should give them another chance, that I should reach out, try to reconcile, put the family back together. And maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being stubborn. Maybe I'm letting pride get in the way of healing. But every time I consider it, I remember Jennifer and Rebecca's voices in my kitchen discussing my disposal like it was a business transaction. I remember Michael's calculated concern and David's practiced sympathy. I remember the moment I realized my own sons were willing to betray me for money. And I just can't. I can't forget that. I can't unsee who they revealed themselves to be.
So where does that leave me now? 65 years old, widowed, estranged from my children, but still standing, still fighting, still Jordan. I'm selling most of the properties, actually, keeping a couple for passive income, but liquidating the rest. Turns out, managing a real estate empire isn't as fulfilling when you have no one to share the success with. Who knew? I'm traveling, something Sarah and I always said we'd do someday when I wasn't so busy with work. Well, someday is now, and she's not here to do it with me, but I'm going anyway. I'm doing it for both of us. Greece, Italy, Japan, all the places we circled in travel magazines but never quite made it to. I'm writing, believe it or not, a memoir of sorts about my life in real estate, the deals I made, the lessons I learned. Maybe someone will find it useful. Maybe it'll just collect dust. Either way, it's something to do with my time, something that feels productive. And I'm continuing my volunteer work at Willowbrook. Those few hours a week have become the highlight of my routine. There's something healing about helping people who appreciate it, who don't take it for granted, who see you as a human being and not a resource.
The irony isn't lost on me that I'll end up benefiting a nursing home more than I ever benefited my own family. But that's the choice they made for us. Not me, them. Do I miss my grandchildren? Every single day. I have photos on my phone that I look at probably more than I should. Emma would be starting middle school now. Lucas is probably playing Little League. Sophia's at that age where everything is a wonder and a discovery. I'm missing all of it, and that kills me. But I'm also teaching them a lesson, even if they're too young to understand it now. I'm teaching them that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people terribly and still expect their love and support, that integrity matters more than money. Will they ever learn that lesson? Will they ever know the full story? Maybe, maybe not. That's up to their parents, and I don't have much faith in what they'll choose to share.
If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this: protect yourself. I don't just mean financially, although that's important too. I mean protect your dignity, your autonomy, your right to make your own choices. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't make excuses for them. Don't rationalize their behavior. Don't convince yourself you're misunderstanding or overreacting. Trust your instincts. And document everything. Save those texts. Keep records of those conversations. Note the dates and times of suspicious behavior. I was able to make my estate ironclad because I had evidence of what was happening. I had proof. Richard, my lawyer, had everything he needed to ensure my wishes would be honored. Your assets are yours until the day you die. Nobody, and I mean nobody, has the right to pressure you into giving them up before you're ready. Not your children, not your family, not anyone. If they truly care about you, they'll respect that. If they don't respect it, that tells you everything you need to know about their true priorities. I know some people listening to this will think I'm harsh, that I'm throwing away my family over money, that I'm being unforgiving and cruel. Maybe they're right. Maybe years from now, I'll be on my deathbed regretting this decision, wishing I'd tried harder to reconcile. But I don't think so. Because every time I go to Willowbrook and see what my donation will do, every time I meet another Margaret who needs help and deserves dignity, I feel at peace with my choice. My money will do good in this world. Real, tangible good. It'll help people who need help, not fund luxuries for people who already have more than enough.
It's been 2 years since Sarah died. 2 years since I discovered who my sons really are. 2 years since I made the hardest decision of my life. I'm okay. I'm surviving. Some days are harder than others, but I'm still here, still moving forward. My sons made their choice. They chose greed. They chose to see me as a means to an end rather than as their father. They chose money over relationships. And I made my choice. I chose dignity. I chose to use my life's work to help others. I chose to maintain control of my own destiny, even if it meant losing the people I thought I knew. Do I wish things had turned out differently? Every single day. I wish my sons were the men I raised them to be. I wish their wives valued family over fortune. I wish I could know my grandchildren, watch them grow up, be part of their lives. But we don't always get what we wish for. Life is messy and complicated, and sometimes deeply painful. All we can do is make the best decisions we can with the information we have and try to live with the consequences. My sons wanted my money. Now they won't get it. That's not revenge. That's not spite. That's just consequences. They revealed their priorities, and I responded accordingly. I'm Jordan. I'm 65 years old. I built an empire through hard work and sacrifice. I loved my wife for 40 years. I raised 2 sons who I thought would carry on my legacy. Instead, I leave my legacy to strangers who will use it to help other strangers. And somehow, that feels more right than anything else. Because in the end, maybe family isn't about blood. Maybe it's about respect and love and treating each other like we matter beyond our bank accounts. My sons forgot that, and now they'll remember it for the rest of their lives.
Thanks for listening to my story. I hope it makes you think about your own family, your own priorities, your own choices. And if you're in a situation like mine, if you're being pressured or manipulated by people who are supposed to love you, remember, you have options. You have rights. You have the power to make your own choices. Use it.